Hello, everybody. We'll let people join in. Oh, it's still just the 6 of us. Okay, I'm just going to wait.
Imagine that we will do the session for each other's.
You know what? I am so excited about hearing your work. That would be actually just fine. This was important work. So, but here we have people joining us. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen up. Okay. Welcome people as they're joining. I see Cindy and Greg and Gail. We've got familiar faces. We've got a really tight schedule here and everyone is going to do their best to stay on time. I am the panel facilitator. I have a few slides here at the beginning and we'll be introducing each one of the speakers by alphabetical order on this panel topic that I've asked them to address. What we're going to focus on today is this idea of metaphor and how metaphor can be used in clinical and practical settings to invite an imaginative conscience to the process of learning more about meaning. I've asked the panelists to explore the use of metaphors from various wisdom traditions and to be thinking about how we can use metaphors both to stretch individuals and to work towards a goal of global responsibility and reconciliation. Towards this idea of reconciliation, I would ask you to think a little bit about this quote by Elizabeth Lucas. This is from her book, Understanding Man's Search for Meaning. If we look at the otherliness of others in love and respect, the alienation disappears and with it the division. The I and the very different you can be integrated in a common we. For these reasons, logotherapy has been called an agent of reconciliation. Such an important concept right now in our time of global suffering. And what I invite you all to be thinking about as you listen to our panelists talk about metaphors that for some of them come from within their cultural traditions, for some of them reaching across cultural divides and exploring metaphors from other traditions, is that this is an opportunity to embrace and practice an epistemic humility in the face of otherliness, that we don't try to make the other the same, we let them be a very different you. Now, Elizabeth Lucas is just really amazing in terms of her fascination and creative use of metaphors. And I've just put a few of them out here on this slide. I'm not going to visit all of them, but if you haven't had a chance to read Lucas's work, or if you have and remember, she is very much someone who uses metaphors as ways of grasping at things that can be difficult, perhaps, to access through mere cognitive or theoretical approaches, which makes her logotherapeutic style so accessible. One of the things I really appreciate about Lucas is how she's also very creative with her metaphors. It's often clear that she is developing them right in the moment with the client. And she also mixes metaphors in a way that can be very creative, such as the example in this lower right corner, in which she mixes metaphors of different stories of being strong like Sisyphus, and yet without absurdity, because the starfish, which getting thrown from the beach back into the ocean where it can live, she combines metaphors in interesting ways. Metaphor use is something that is really important right now, not just in the therapeutic spaces, but also in communication studies, for where they have certain kinds of power to access things that may not be accessible through a traditional cognitive rationality. This is a very important book on metaphors by Lecoff and Johnson. They said, metaphor is one of our most important tools for trying to comprehend partially what cannot be comprehended totally. Our feelings, aesthetic experiences, moral practices, and spiritual awareness. These endeavors of the imagination are not devoid of rationality. Since they use metaphor, they employ an imaginative rationality in a way that might be reminiscent of Frankl's interest in the irrational or the aesthetic. Using metaphors, I would suggest, is an opportunity for learning. And this is a work by Kathleen Forsyth, who talks about the creation and implementation of metaphor as creating new meaning, defining insights, and new perceptions of reality. She calls metaphor a living language, where whole pattern is created from the composite unity of both our subjective and objective points of view. It's a mechanism of ordering newness, and they are bridges that order the nature of our collective and individual humanity. Again, pushing to the point for logotherapy that it's not only for the individuals, but also for the global reconciliation. I did want to point out a very specific kind of metaphor that is new in the terminology, and important because Frankl seems to love this kind of metaphor, a little different from Lucas, who uses very traditional metaphors often. An isophor is a specific kind of metaphor in which it is the activity of doing itself that brings forth the discovery of new possible meanings. These are imaginative analogies that arise from actually participating in these embodied feeling states. The classic example of an isophor is juggling. You can think about juggling, but it's in the actual effort of juggling that one can appreciate the complexity of the act and use it metaphorically to talk about, for example, juggling work-life balance. That's a metaphor that takes on a new meaning if you've actually tried to juggle. As I mentioned, Frankl really likes isophors, and we see this in the way that he encourages his clients and his therapists to think about things like mountain climbing, or athletics and sports, or listening to a symphony, or engaging a sunset, walking through nature, that these are metaphorical spaces that are engaged not by thinking, but by actually doing. So I've asked the panelists to think a little bit about how their spaces might include metaphors or isophors. Let me turn this over now. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to turn this over to our first panelist. Levi Keehler is a licensed professional counselor in the state of Oklahoma. He's internationally certified as an advanced alcohol and drug counselor and co-occurring disorders specialist. Levi, go ahead and put your slides up if you want to. He's also an equine therapist. Levi is a leader in his communities with a passion for teaching, practicing, exploring, and role modeling a holistic view of healing and emotional wellness. A deeply curious person, one of Levi's many current interests includes the logotherapeutic use of songwriting and singing. Levi, I'll give you an 8-minute warning. Thank you.
There we go.
There you go.
Sorry about that. I started with this quote here because, again, the use of humor is such an important part of Native American culture. And it has been a cornerstone of survival through the multiple attempts of genocide and all of those horrific acts that have happened throughout the years. And we have quite the dark humor. We're not even really talking about that piece today, but it is something that I'm looking at trying to explore later on. So I wanted to share that quote. When people can laugh at themselves and laugh at others and hold all aspects of life together without letting anyone drive them to extremes, then it would seem to me that the people can survive. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm going to skip that just for time purposes. It was just my title. For my cultural influences, of course, there is a melding of multiple things that influence that personal cultural piece. First of all, with childhood, my father was a functional addict, and like many addicts, he learned to speak and maneuver through inquiries and those types of things. So he had the gift of gab, as they say. And that's one of the benefits that I've actually gotten from him. And just a couple little sayings I wanted to say about what I learned from him. One of the things he used to always say is, you can't bullshit a bullshitter. And that's come in very handy as an addiction therapist. He also said this, and it's one of my favorites. The Lord talks to us all, but remember to pull your head out of your ass and clean out your ears, or you'll think everything you hear is shit. So that one's always kind of stuck with me. Also, I come from a rural, impoverished, non-reservation Indian community in northeastern Oklahoma. So that impacts lots of things, especially research and those types of things, because most research is either done in urban Indian centers or on reservations. We are a non-reservation rural area. And so it's difficult to look at research and then say that it's comparable, et cetera. But with that rural, impoverished, non-reservation Indian community, we didn't have a lot to do. PBS was about the only channel we could get. And but that turned out to be a very important piece in my cultural upbringing as well, because one of the most treasured memories I have there is watching The Power of Myth. Every time they did a telethon on PBS, they would always do The Power of Myth, and so I got to watch it on about a twice a year basis kind of thing. It was very good, and it's really changed how I see the world and all sorts of things. In addition to that, listening to music is a spiritual experience for us, and that's more of a family thing potentially, but it was really important to us, and it has changed how I use music even in work. And so we'll talk potentially a little bit about that some other time. We won't have time today, of course. One of the other things I should say, it was an unofficial family motto. If we can't explain it, then we'll find a song that can. And literally, we would sit around and listen to the song. So through adulthood, I worked for my tribe for 13 years. I started the summer between earning my bachelor's degree and starting my master's program. And that was my first official exposure to my tribal traditions, etc. I had been seeped in the local traditions, but didn't really understand how they connected to the tribal traditions and how they were tribal traditions until working for my tribe. I worked closely there with seasoned professionals and elders, many of whom became unofficial mentors to me. After 13 years, I decided to leave my tribe. And what remains the most moving moment of my career was when a tribal elder gave me a bison figurine. It's actually the one in the picture there on the right side, has the mother, and it has the white bison calf. And he said to me, "Don't forget who you are and what you represent." And so I'm going to go into that for just a minute. The white bison, or the legend of the white bison, originally is connected to the Lakota Sioux tribe, but many tribes have prophecies about the white bison. For all of those, they signify a great change, but they can also signify warnings. For us specifically, in the example that it's given earlier, and what he was meaning by his statement was it's a hope and rebirth. It's an important thing that we continue to fight the good fight, and it shows that the hoop has connected and the circle of life is continuing. I've taken a lot of the concepts that I've learned there and applied those into my private practice. As you can see to the left, the Native American medicine wheel. Now you'll see this in different ways with the colors in different places, but it's always the 4 colors. And if you notice, that's the basic kind of what we talk about, bio, psychosocial, spiritual model. And it's talking about wholeness. And I'll let you look at that on your own time because I'm running out of time already. But Gaduagi means the 3 of them, loosely translated. But it means that we live in all of those dimensions. And we live in all those dimensions all the time. According to Benny Smith, who's a tribal elder medicine man, the Creator has given us 4 gifts: intellect, wisdom, compassion, and spiritual guardianship. The one that I want to speak of just real quickly here is a human-to-human brotherhood of spiritual identity and inclusion of all people. So it should be inclusive, and it shouldn't be exclusive. I wanted to mention also that logotherapy, existential analysis, is the Indian way. And there's several quotes that kind of, I hope, pin that for us. I learned a long time ago that I can't control the challenges the Creator sends my way, but I can control the way I think about them and deal with them. That's the first female chief, Wilma Mankiller, sorry. I also have another one from her at the bottom. Cows run away from the storm while the buffalo charges toward it and gets through it quicker. Whenever I'm confronted with a tough challenge, I do not prolong the torment. I become the buffalo. That is essentially everything that I have today. I wanted to make sure and honor that time that I have. It looks like I got about 30 seconds left. So I'm going to yield my time, as they say, on the Senate floor.
Thank you, Levi, so much. Let me then present Dr. June Rousso. She is a licensed psychologist in private psychotherapy practice in New York City. She is working with children and adults. She's an advisor to the student-led nonprofit organization called Child Resilient, where she works to introduce logotherapy principles to foster their commitments to developing greater emotional resilience. She is one of our new clinician diplomates with a thesis presentation this Saturday exploring logotherapy and positive psychology in cultivating resilience. June, please. You have to unmute, June.
Said hi. I'm going to read most of my paper. I did not make slides because I worried about computer glitches. So just keep it simple. So I'd like to explore some rituals to illustrate the deep meaning that they can hold for people. In some instances, they can be traditional language metaphors, and in other isophors, where the metaphor is the behavior itself. One ritual reflecting both aspects of metaphor is the Jewish Sabbath or Shabbos, celebrated by one of my clients. I will later discuss some everyday routines that we typically do not view metaphorically, but which can be rich in individual and possible shared meanings. My understanding from working with my client is that Shabbos commemorates both the creation of the world and of the Jewish people being freed from slavery in ancient Egypt. There is no work to be done from Friday to Sunday night sundown. Shabbos is a time of prayer, reflection, song, and sharing family meals. I also learned from my clients some of the language metaphors associated with Shabbos, in particular, that it has been compared to a bride or a queen. Seeing Shabbos as a bride or queen symbolizes the specialness of the occasion and is a time of celebration. Other interpretations compare the bride image to being married to Israel or being a bride of God. Shabbos has a very special, unique meaning for my client. It is a time to disconnect from work and social media and reflect in a spiritual and religious sense. She reflects on her week and life, praying for things she might want, such as getting married, getting a new job, or the health of a loved one. She reflects on what would truly be meaningful to her in the coming week and sometimes further into the future. My client described the most meaningful part of Shabbos as the chance to connect to her husband emotionally and spiritually. She also likened therapy as similar to Shabbos, where she can step out of the everyday world for an hour a day and reflect. Hold on. And in thinking about my client and her experience, I came up with the act of quiet reflection that can happen during Shabbos is reminiscent of Elizabeth Lucas's emphasis in her book, Stillness and Concentration, on the importance of stillness in our lives, where people begin to hear their inner voice that is often lost in the clutter of everyday life. Even the act of lighting candles and praying for something in the near and further future demands that kind of stillness, and out of stillness we can hear our own voice and its desires. From a broader perspective, Shabbos for many people involves renewed hope and a time to focus on as well as transcend the self. Through prayer and connecting to others in a meaningful way, we have the opportunity for self-transcendence as discussed by Frankl. This connectedness also can foster otherness.
So we won't see you tonight, or we'll see you late tonight?
Okay. This connectedness also can foster otherness in the sense that Lucas describes as a time to take in others with love and respect. And in some instances, this can be a renewed love and respect and a form of reconciliation. Even the most basic everyday routines can be explored with clients as a way to start to understand that we often choose activities with meaning without realizing it. I could say that I have a daily routine of walking my dogs. On the surface, it is my responsibility, my obligation. But if I think about it more deeply, walking the dogs allows me alone time in the park, a time to reflect, to take in the beauty of nature, to recharge, and at the same time connect with people in conversations, some of which turn out to be meaningful moments. In this respect, my routine has become a ritual and a metaphor for what holds meaning for me in life. As a final routine and in closing, I came upon an article from the New York Times in May of 2021, written by Zoe Boyer. And she described mundane work that she was doing during a period of depression. And her mundane work was bleaching gym mats and washing buckets in a flower shop. After having lived through a period of severe depression, these seemingly empty rituals became meditative practices and allowed her to reflect. And finally, she comments, in her reflection, quote, "I hardly recognize the buoyant person I'd become," unquote. Similarly, what was a routine had taken on meaning. In the context of therapy, recognizing her buoyancy could allow her to explore meaningful possibilities that would allow her to move forward in her life and closer toward her potential. Thank you.
Thank you so much, June. That was
Yeah,
lovely.
you're welcome.
Our next presenter is Niharika Sanyal. She is a purpose guide, youth leadership coach, and facilitator, serving people who long for more depth and meaning in their lives. Niharika has had graduate training in the United States with a master's in education in human development and psychology, and she has continued in postgraduate training and professional practice in India. Her logotherapy research and practice has included a particular interest in the use of metaphors in the existential depth traditions. Niharika, please.
Thank you, Dr. Janeta. I'll just share my screen. Yeah. That's visible? Okay, awesome. All right, so I think that each of us has a unique language in which our noetic self communicates to us, and that this language often speaks in metaphors and images, though it also speaks in feelings and transmissions. It's a language beyond words. And so that's what I want to talk about today. And I always say that finding out your purpose is like performing archaeology. It's about digging out what's buried within, but burning like fire. And that metaphor comes to me from a dream I had 3 to 4 years ago during a time of transition. And one night in my dreams, I'm sitting at the edge of my window in my dream, peering into this deep, dark valley, and a fire gently starts to flicker below. And it's not quite a fire, but liquid fire, wildly erupting its way through the window into my cool blue room. And somebody has already called the police to take out the fire in my house. It hadn't struck me even that I wanted the fire out. But this town is full of houses whose fires have been doused out. Houses erupt in fire all the time, and the police are always dousing them out in this dream. So I used to think that in this dream, this house on fire meant the world's destruction and crisis, but now I know that that fire is both outside and inside. It is where my own fire has gone in anger when it could not find its flames a place in this world. And I now know that this deep broken hole of fire should burn, that then maybe one day it doesn't have to come erupting like this as liquid fire in midnight dreams burning down houses, but as the fire of our souls no longer doused, but burning everything. So this dream, when it came to me 3-4 years ago, it evoked for me a memory of my true soul level calling, which is to ignite that inner fire in people. In the Vedas, it is Agni, the fire god, who lay down and hid himself within the darkness. It's because of his presence that everyone is evolving, seeking after the higher knowledge of the Supreme. And so when that image of fire came, it was shocking to me, but it kind of felt like it was connecting me back to a truer source, that inner fire, that what the Vedas kind of refer to. And I think the way it came through was through something called the imaginal realm. And so this is a realm that's referred to in Sufism, shamanism. It's the home of the archetypes of the soul. And the quality of a true image that comes from soul or from the noetic is that it tends to be very psychoactive. It tends to do its work on you. So once I made myself open to receiving this image of the fire, which initially was shocking to me, it came back in my life. That fire was surprising because I had a history of depression 10 years ago. So I always saw myself as not being energetic, not having connection with this fire element, being kind of passive and quiet. But once I let this image kind of do its work on me, it started igniting this creativity, and it wanted to write and speak and create and make things. And it was shocking to me. And it's like this, my mind couldn't have made it up. So that's another characteristic of images that come from soul. It's like the mind couldn't have made it up. It's almost surprising. It tends to bypass the logical mind. It has an energetic quality of its own. And so in logotherapy, we often talk about self-transcendence, but it's also possible to focus on inscendence, on burrowing into that depths of our being, where our subconscious can reveal images through the alleyways of our shadows, our sacred wounds of rage and anger and grief. If we can sit long enough with that meaninglessness we feel, and let that meaninglessness reveal its pain for the world. And sometimes there is an archetype of a god or a goddess who might summon us to that place. So this is the dark goddess Kali, for example, who has been appearing in meditations or dreams sometimes in the last year. And when she comes, it's all hell breaks loose, as you can see, because Kali this icon shows her holding a severed head and a bloody sword, signifying her power to create revolutionary change, dissolve ego, and overthrow hierarchies and structures. That cutting of the head, it's like a symbol for dissolving the ego. And you find her energy in endings that presage new beginnings, and in that powerful impetus to create change and transformation in your life and your world. So once the image of Kali started appearing to me, I knew it was time for a major shift in my life. And it's possible that she comes to me because she's from my culture. So I see her in that way. But what I've seen is that it's kind of like she has an energetic frequency. But in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, there's certain versions of the wrathful goddess Tara, wrathful versions of goddess Tara, which actually look a lot like goddess Kali. It's like the same energy is turning up in different cultures and being represented in different ways. And I think it also crosses cultural bounds, because one of my clients in Lithuania, who has no connection with Hinduism, she's recently receiving images of the dark god Shiva, who is the guy lying down on the floor, her Kali's counterpart. And she's like surprised because it's not in her cultural consciousness. So why do these images come? I think they turn up when they want to bring a certain power back in your life. They are asking to be embodied. And I see them more as an inner archetype rather than an outer god or goddess. It's a power or an energy in yourself that's wanting to return. And so Kali is like fiery love, and she wants to purify the layers of your ego till you can get completely to the noetic. So there's an element of like death, dying to your former identity, letting go what's no longer serving you, so that something new can be reborn. So how do you hold space for this kind of a process is a big question for me coming up in my practice, because I've seen especially a lot of women raging because they suddenly realize often how much that energy, and that fire has been suppressed in them over so many years. And so the grief and the rage comes out, and before the noetic is anchored, it can tend to express itself in a distorted way. And so how do we anchor that noetic so that it's divinely expressed? That's a big question I sit with. And other archetypes, animal archetypes, so in the shamanic work, the lower world is said to be the place where our power animals reside, and we can actually journey there and retrieve the power that is lost through an animal. And so, for example, the phoenix image here, it's something that speaks to me. It's a combination of both the fire and the Kali energy of death and rebirth. And interestingly, when this image came to me, it was this phoenix in the sky. And so what happens when two elements meet, fire and sky, fire and air? So sometimes clients might connect with a particular element, and it's a way in which that element is trying to speak to them. And so interestingly, I never connected with the sky, but in the last few months, the mountains in the Himalayas called to me, and I moved here, and just being under the vast valley of sky has been doing its work on me. And that's been also another surprising thing. So the imaginal realm can be accessed through dreams, meditative journeys into the imaginal realm, movement, art, poetry, which is why I shared that poem at the beginning. It can come as goddess archetypes, animals, revelations of your own higher self, and even outer images mirrored by nature. So if we look at nature as an extension of our consciousness, Levi spoke about this a little. Why can't nature also mirror to you your own inner, an inner resonance? And so this image of like flowers in a cluster kind of spoke to me last year, saying, create clusters of communities where people can connect back with their soul fire. That's the kind of families that I will create, is kind of the guidance I was getting just through this cluster of flowers. And so once we reestablish this connection with the imaginal realm, it can become the source of receiving a continuous inner guidance. And it's like a language we've forgotten. And I think this is so super important that we reconnect with that. Because Einstein famously wrote, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And so the path of soul encounter through contact with the imaginal realm is the fountainhead of true activism, and activism rooted in the images of our souls and not just the thoughts in our heads. And I think that's kind of where we need to go for a true kind of soul-infused, fiery, purpose-infused world. Thank you, everyone. Happy to connect. My contact is below.
Thank you so much, Niharika. That was lovely. Our last presenter on the panel is Daliya. She is the founder of Logotherapy MENA, the Logotherapy institution addressing the Arab-speaking world in the Middle East and North African areas. With a home base in Lebanon, Daliya has strong practice interests in training and teaching groups in the principles of Logo philosophy for both personal growth and professional development. Also one of our new administrative diplomates, Daliya will be presenting more on her institute's specific mission on Saturday. And I'm so pleased she could join us for this metaphor panel today. Daliya.
Thank you, Janeta. Hello, everyone. I will share screen, and from there I will start. Thank you, Janeta, for this opportunity, and thank you for the board who gave us the chance to talk about the Pearl for Practice. My Pearl for Practice is I'm going to talk about logotherapy and how I use the Bible, passages, stories, and character when I work with people, especially within Christian communities and with faith-based institutions. First of all, and to start with, the Bible is a rich source for meaning and purpose. We see that the people who wrote the Bible and lived the Bible, they were people like us. They were seeking meaning. They were asking for discovery. They had to take choices. They passed into values collision. We see the Bible talking about spirit-led individuals, which means living by the three-dimensionality, not by the flesh. Also, when people did put random goals, they had consequences. While they did put meaningful and purposeful goals, the results were different. So the Bible is a rich source for meaning and purpose. What I'm going to talk today about is the story of the birth of baby Jesus. And to note that baby Jesus in Christianity It is the word of God. The baby is the word. He is the meaning. And the word logos in Christianity, it's from ancient Greek, and it is called the nous. And this is very important. So when we talk about the birth of baby Jesus, we talk about the birth of meaning. We talk about the birth of the word. And this is very important in the process that we will undergo. First of all, the fact that meaning is born from the spirit. What we will see now is big title by our education on meaning, but through Bible, through this Bible story. Meaning is in the nous. It is in our spirit. And in logotherapy, we know that the spirit is the home of meaning. And from there, we can discover it. Like, for example, in Matthew 1:11, he tells us that when Joseph and Mary got married, which they are the mother and father of baby Jesus, Mary was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit before they came together. It means that meaning was there. It was born from the Spirit even before Mary and Joseph came together. So meaning is from before. This is the first thing. Meaning is born from the Spirit. And it is its birth is not randomness, and there are no coincidences. For example, in Matthew 1:22-23, they say to us that the birth of Jesus from Virgin Mary, it took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. Baby Jesus didn't came out from any person. Baby Jesus came from Virgin Mary for fulfilling what the Lord has said before in the Old Testament. So the birth of meaning is not random. There are no randomness, no coincidences. And as Dr. Cindy said, on purpose for a purpose. The third fact is what? Meaning is discovered and it's not created. And this is one of the most important things that people have like misconceptions about. In Matthew 2:1-2, we will, there is the story of the Magi's. There are 3 Magi's who came from the East, and they asked, where is the one who has been born King of Jews? They asked, where is he? We want to see him. We want to know him. We want to bring him gifts. So they didn't create baby Jesus. They discovered him. So they didn't create the meaning, the word. They discovered the meaning and they discovered the world. So the third thing is that meaning is discovered and not created. The fourth thing, meaning requires movement. For the Magi's, they went on their way, and there was a star that that guided them to arrive to baby Jesus. So we cannot be passive when we are searching for meaning. We have to be proactive. Meaning is a journey. We have to get up, we have to go, and during the process, we should not skip signs. Signs are always there and they will guide us to the place of the meaning. So meaning requires movement. We cannot find meaning when we are just sitting on our chairs. Fifth thing, post-meaning discovery is different than pre-meaning phase. The Magi's, they didn't came back from the same route because they had a dream telling them not to go back on the same route because Herod want to kill Jesus because he will ask them to tell him where he is. So after they have discovered the meaning, they had to take a different route. So after we discover our meaning, the post-meaning phase is not the same. It maybe will ask us to change our routes, maybe a job, a place of living, whatever. It needs courage, it requires sacrifices, bravery, embracing the unknown, etc. So when we discover meaning, it is a totally different route after that. The sixth thing, discovering meaning is our responsibility. As we have seen from before, we need movement, we need to be aware, we need to ask. So it's not a magic potion or a prescription that can be given to us. It's a journey and a process, and after which we will arrive and we will discover meaning. The seventh thing, the road with meaning is not straight, and meaning is not located by time and space. In Matthew 2:13-23, we see that the angel appeared to Joseph, and he told him to take Mary and the child to Egypt and to stay there and not come back because this is risky for them. And after Herod was dead, he appeared to them again and told them that it is safe to go back to the land of Israel because those who were trying to kill the child are dead. So he got up and went. So this is why the road with meaning, when we discover it, it's not a straight line. Sometimes we have to go into a certain direction, and other times we have to go back into another direction. And the most important thing is to hear the Spirit. Meanwhile, they were guided by the angel. It means by something spiritual inside who led them to know what to do in order not to lose the meaning, and this meaning would be killed. So the road is not straight. There are challenges, and meaning is not located by time nor space. So how these practical things can be done? Well, I believe if each individual grows in this knowledge, the world will grow. And this shows openness and breadth. So this is why if I have worked with each individual on the previous points, they will be individuals living by a spirit-led life. They will not believe in randomness. They will work on the discovery. They will move towards the meaning. They will take the necessary action and listen to the Spirit. Consequently, they will be a role models to the community, not to the Christian, because they will be putting their belief in practice. And maybe they will be light for others in order to search for meaning in their spirituality and religion, or secularists for the notion of meaning through stories. So as I always say to everyone in all my presentation at the end, may our life be a pursuit of meaning. Hope this story was interesting for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daliya. And I want
Thank you, Janeta.
You bet. I want to congratulate the panel. They were asked to keep to 8 minutes, and they really rocked it because we had such tight time. My hope is that these metaphors were rich for you folks. I wanted to just point out from this panel discussion in a way that I hope will be inspiring on another level, is that these are 4 new logotherapists in our community, 2 of whom have finished their diplomates, all 4 of whom I had the privilege of working with as part of their academic associate training in the last 18 months or so. And I think that for some of us, we are interested in the growth and excitement of our logotherapy community, and these 4 very gifted persons are new members. So I was very pleased to have this panel so that we could showcase what not just amazing talent, but just such heart-centered practice we have for people that are joining our community. I'm watching the time. We just have a few minutes. If I could just invite the audience to reflect specifically on the panel discussion of metaphor and your thoughts on the power of metaphor in logotherapy. If there are any questions, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourself.
Well, I wanted to say something, Janeta. Even when we have done the exercise, there's always additional exploration, even for me. So when I read the story again and again, I felt there's a lot of things coming up more, and I'm sure if I will read it and meditate on it again, more things related to logotherapy and the notion of meaning, that they will be there. So even it's a process of exploration for us, in addition to our clients, patients, people we work with.
I think that's true. It goes to the point that Forsyth made in one of my early slides, in which she calls metaphor a living language. And so I think all of your presentations really captured that the depth of the language of metaphor continues to reveal at various points in our own lives and our own wrestling with it, what this might mean, not just for meaning in the moment, but ultimate meaning. And not just for us as individuals, but towards transcending the otherliness. What I'm hoping our audience heard is that if they encountered metaphors that they've never heard before, that it does begin to transcend towards the others who are different from ourselves, and that metaphors can be used that are familiar, And metaphors can also be used that are unfamiliar, that come from the lives that we're encountering. This is the hope of logotherapy's reconciliation globally, I think. So.
True.
Any other thoughts, or maybe just jazz hands from everybody for our great panel?
Woohoo! A clap for us.
A clap for
Janeta,
us.
and really thank you for this amazing creative idea by which you like introduced something in a very tight time, but very rich. And I was excited to hear also my colleagues from different cultures and how things can be relevant for each person, and how values are interesting in how we perceive meaning.
Yes, please, everybody has their panel set up on Pathable. So if you have feedback or thoughts for any of these panelists, I invite our audience to please be in touch with them directly so that they can hear some of the thoughts you had as they shared these really important metaphors from their own practices. So I think Charles might be here somewhere, or maybe he's done, but I think we're probably at the end of our presentation.
Right.
But this is
I guess someone is trying to talk. No.
Okay, in the interest of time, then I'm going to excuse everybody from their rooms and invite you to participate in the lunch sessions, even if it is not lunch in your time. And Daliya and Niharika, who are from different time zones, really different, thank you for joining us so late at night. I really appreciate it. Okay,
well, we
thanks,
still
everybody.
have a long night till 1 o'clock, 1:30 o'clock at night. Yeah.
Okay, get some coffee going. Okay, bye everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.